758. So this is so just to bring perspective and some developments with regards to the elections that are going to be holding in another 9 days. Today is the 2nd of November. On the 11th, these elections are going to be holding in 3 states of the Federation. How ready is INEC across these 3 states at the federal level? How ready is the commission also to execute the elections? Of course, still speaking about elections to be held in Imo State, we see that the workforce for the election in the state revolves around 21,000 staff members. So with this number of 21,000 staff members for INEC in Imo State alone, how well executed will the elections be? Of course, INEC is promising their readiness for the election so far in the state.
Well, one thing that the southeastern part of the country is seriously of great concern at this point is insecurity. And as long as insecurity is concerned, so far, when you talk about the readiness of INEC, we've had different meetings between the leadership of INEC from the headquarters, talking about the INEC chairman, Professor Media Kubo, having several meetings with heads of security agencies in Imo State, not just Imo State, but Bayelsa and Kogi State, the other states that will be holding the elections. And those different meetings were about fashioning out modalities to ensure that voters are not intimidated, voters are not by any way exposed to danger, voters are not by any way not able to vote their conscience during the election. So looking at the money also that has been voted for INEC and the appropriation, the 2022-3 second appropriation sent in by President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, we also see that there is a financial provisions being made available for INEC to conduct the elections. Of course, the manpower is going to be very much available. We are talking about just 3 states, so the security logistics is going to be very much easy to handle. The transportation logistics is going to be a lot more easy to handle. When you're looking at the personnel strength, you're also going to have more than enough hands to handle the 3 states elections. So we expect as Nigerians that INEC will be using these to remedy itself. Recall, we're still having Nigerians who are not, in terms with the operations of INEC during the just concluded general elections. And many have also said this is time for INEC to rectify some of the biggest challenges that Nigerians face during the just concluded elections, and then be able to repose the confidence of Nigerians in the electoral umpire. And that's exactly what Nigerians hope to see. But should INEC again not be able to hold grounds and deliver to Nigerians free, fair, credible and transparent election, then it is going to be a very serious worry and concern for all Nigerians.
Well, moving from that particular flash news this morning, we know that the rainy season has come to an end, and the sun is, shining bright in the skies in most parts of the country. Although, yes, there's still some rains, but it has increasingly continued to subside. But this morning, we have a warning from NIMET, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, is sending out a warning to the country, of course, of an impending dust haze. We know that somewhere around November, December is what we like to term the Harmattan season, where there's a lot of, dust and all of those haze. But of course, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency is raising fresh concerns over an impending dust haze that is expected to deteriorate visibility across the country in coming days. The agency is emphasizing the need for airline operators to be on high alert and avail themselves of weather reports from NIMET for effective planning and scheduling of their operations. Of course, this alarm was raised yesterday, of course, signed by General Manager Muntari Yusuf Ibrahim. Now, of course, the winds are projected to stand at over 10 meters and 925 hpha and are favorable for dust haze propagations into the northern parts of the country. These are strong numbers. 10 meters is quite a distance for haze to cover. This is a warning that NIMET is sending out as of last night now for the entire country.
Well, wind is definitely one of the biggest things to be afraid of. I recall growing up as a child, there were days that maybe you're probably returning from school or you're just sitting outside playing. When you get to hear, um, you get to see these heavy winds bringing the doors, bringing the debris, bringing anything and everything on its path. And sometimes for children who are not strong enough, you can definitely just fall within the cause of it. So this is definitely an issue for Nigerians to be very wary of, to be concerned about, and also to take precautionary measures. Because if you're driving, for instance, in the midst of such a wind, you're definitely not going to have road visibility and clear visibility to see where you're headed and what is coming, ahead of you. So taking into consideration this warning will definitely help. And I think that the Federal Road Safety Commission, because this is a point where Nigerians are going to be traveling a lot,
Yeah.
people who are just moving away, beginning to move early, people who are trying to convey the last batch of goods for the ember period down to their respective destination, and even people who are going to their daily, work duties across boards, people who are to be, concerned about the warning. But then, of course, you ask, will Nigerians take heed to this warning? What measures and modalities are the federal government putting in place to ensure that, there is a readily available help for any situation that may arise as a result of these? Remember, Nigerians are still grappling with the effect of flood, and despite the several warnings from NIMED, despite the several advisories that were issued to Nigerians as well, a lot of people who were within the flood-prone area still stayed stuck in the flood-prone areas until the flood came, and then things were destroyed, and now we're crying foul. So warnings, advisories like these are not just meant for social media, they're not just meant as press release, they are meant to caution Nigerians, they're meant to help Nigerians plan their lives ahead and take proactive measures to not get caught up in the dangers that comes with such scenarios. But I do hope that beside the warning coming from NIMED, Nigerians will take the responsibility of taking care of themselves and being prepared and proactive enough to know what to watch out for and how to address this concern. Of course, the government on the other part and its agencies will also do their part of being proactive in the measures and procedures kept in place in the event that this brings danger to Nigerians.
Well, visibility, horizontal visibility is expected to be affected up to 800 meters. So it means that the dust haze is really going to be thick, and it's important that we try to keep up with weather condition reports. Of course, as a family on Spectrum Television, we'll try to make that available for our viewers so that we know what we are doing when we step out. Please log on to the NIMED website and stay abreast with the information with regards to the weather condition in the next couple of days. It's already heating up in Chad within the next 24 hours and will travel northward in Nigeria.
Well, there are different, there are a couple of high-risk areas that we need to look into. You're looking at the, individuals with respiratory ailments being advised to protect themselves as the weather condition is not good for their health. I mean, you're looking at people like people who have asthma, people who have difficulty in breathing outside of asthma and other illnesses. Those are people who need to be very concerned and, of course, take the proactive measures. You're looking at line operators also being advised to, consistently avail themselves of weather report from NIMED for effective planning in their operations. Of course, you're looking at other people whose situation and environment will not possibly allow them to take actions when it comes to scenarios like this. And also, it's very important to know that NIMED has promised to continue in its part and its duties and responsibilities of consistently monitoring the weather and reporting it to Nigerians across board, which is, of course, something that will help all of us. But I'd also like to reiterate here that beyond the warnings and advisories given by NIMED, it is very important that Nigerians take into consideration these things. I know that I've been in a vehicle where somebody who has asthma traveled all the way from his or her state to another location, and then the most important thing that she should have come with was not in her possession, and that is was it called again?
The inhaler.
The inhaler wasn't in a pause. And then you ask a question. You know you're asthmatic. You're traveling all the way across states. That would take you 9, 10, 12 hours. And then you forgot the most important thing that you should never forget. And in the event, if we didn't have probably another person who is asthmatic and then with an inhaler in the vehicle, nobody knows what would have happened. So it's one thing for NIMED to issue these advisories and warnings to Nigerians. It's another thing for us to take precautionary measures to protect our lives, protect our family, friends, and loved ones. And we do hope that as Nigerians, we do get past, sitting by the fence and waiting for the federal government and the government to do everything for us to take that proactive measures. But moving away from that, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu came in with the mandate that his ministers and appointees are going to be probed, rather are going to have to be reviewed, and their performances will be looked into periodically to ensure that they perform in line with the mandate. And Nigerians haven't forgotten that 3 years was the mandate given by President Ahmed Bola Tinubu for his appointees to ensure they turn the tides of the Nigerian economic downturn around. We see that President Ahmed Bola Tinubu has again issued a stern warning to his cabinet members, and he said, perform or be sacked. Now, the Tinubu warned the ministers at the cabinet retreat held yesterday, Wednesday, and he said ministers in his cabinet will only retain their offices based on their performances, which will be reviewed periodically. Now, he made the assertion when he declared open the 2023 cabinet retreat for ministers, presidential aides, permanent secretaries, and top government functionaries held at the State House Conference Center in Abuja. I'd like to just give voice to President Ahmed Bola Tinubu before coming back to dwell on this conversation.
We've spent the last 6 months reviewing and evaluating ourselves. We've come a long way, but we set the agenda. Healthcare is a priority. Education of our people is a must. No other weapon against poverty than education. You have opportunity to change things. Recently, or 3 days ago, we received the Chancellor of the Republic of Germany and his delegation of investors. One of their key complaints and the question is whether they can bring their capital, repatriate their dividends, or if not satisfied, take their capital away. Trade and investment was called upon by me to explain further that those obstacles are gone, never to come back again. We are open for business. And that is why we established Resort Delivery Unit. At the end of this retreat, we are going to sign a bond of understanding between you, the ministers, the permanent secretary, and myself. If you are performing, nothing to fear. If you miss the objective, we review. If no performance, you leave us.
Of course, this is the strongest point where the president has continued to hold the ministers elected, appointed rather into his cabinet to serve for the next 4 years with him. He has continued to insist that a primary objective for these ministers is to make sure that they perform in the line of duties that they have been saddled with. Of course, this cabinet retreat is expected to look into the renewed hope agenda of the president, talk about blueprint and strategies as to how they are going to be able to effectively navigate Nigeria from the very murky waters that they are currently. Of course, he's asking his ministers not to be a clog in the wheel of Nigeria's progress. Of course, something else that the president noted was that his special advisor on policy coordination, Adiza Usman, is to spearhead the result delivery unit. Of course, this is expected to closely monitor the performances of the ministries, departments, and agencies across the 8 priority areas of his administration. And when we're talking about the 8 priority areas of the Tinubu-led administration, we are looking at food security, we are looking at the promotion of economic growth, development through job creation. Of course, we also see putting an end to food insecurity and ending poverty. What else we also see here? Of course, okay, these are some of the things that he intends to do as his 8 cardinal points of concern. And he's continuing to task his ministers to live up to the expectation. And without being told, we've also seen, these ministers attempts to move up and work very assiduously. Of course, inclusivity is also part of the strong areas that he's trying to work on, drawing on all skill bases to come together and work in the country. Of course, security is a paramount important thing that needs to be discussed in all administration. It's not like the security architecture in Nigeria has really done better. It's still porous in a lot of places. I think just this morning we have information of certain insecurity tales that happened somewhere in Zamfara. So there's a lot to still look out for in the Tinubu-led administration. Of course, he has also promised to tackle criminality. So this retreat is one thing, and then he has said, this retreat also gives them the opportunity to review all of the conversations that they've had so far.
Well, another aspect that Tinubu has mentioned is that this review is also going to look at accountability and transparency on the part of the political appointees. And of course, that means at the end of every spending within the ministries, agencies, and department of government, you're going to be looking at how much money was voted for a project and how far has that project been achieved, how much has been expended, how much is left within the coffers of the agency or the ministry or department who is saddled with the responsibility of handling that job. So it's a lot of expectations, a lot of anticipations. The comment by President Ahmed Bola Tinubu and the body language seems to show that the president wants a country where politicians, leaders are accountable to the people. But then Nigerians would ask, how sincere is President Ahmed Bola Tinubu at this point in time? Because
we must agree that the text sounds really good.
Yes, it does sound good, but Nigerians are used to very beautifully crafted speech, well-crafted manifesto, well-crafted 8-point agenda, 5-point agenda, 7-point agenda. And at the end of 4 years, when you look back, you will see that of the 8-point agenda, of the 4-point to 5-point, whatever numbers of agenda that we had being fed to Nigerians, none of them has been holistically addressed. Not even one has been handled to a point that Nigerians can say, yes, he came in with 7-point, he came in with 5-point, and at the end of his tenure, he's been able to handle one completely done, sorted out, and the next administration will not have to maybe in the meantime focus attention on these areas. So Nigerians are as much as interested in what President Ahmed Bola Tinubu is going to do beyond the speech, beyond the body language, beyond the comments coming from him to the ministers and the appointees of government. Remember, it's 6 months already, and so far as the scorecards by Nigerians is concerned, this present administration has brought Nigerians nothing but hardship, nothing but poverty, nothing but, high level of insecurity, nothing but, consistent, how do we call it, insincerity on the part of government. Because when you look at the narrative playing out across board, it just so seems that all the social investment scheme made so far, the palliative move, thankfully the National Assembly itself has admitted to the fact that it has not gotten to Nigerians that were meant for. So it is clear evidence that all of the things that have been voted so far, 2 billion naira from the federal government, some state added 1, some state added 2 billion, some state added more to the 2 billion naira initially released by the federal government. And of course, regardless of the huge amount of money spent, the palliative still ended up in the hands of people within the ranks and files of government at the detriment of Nigerians. And have we seen anybody being punished for it? Nobody is being punished for it. Nobody's going to jail for it. And so Nigerians will tell you, as we had expected, as we had projected, as NLC-TUC had forewarned that the federal government's release of that money to state government will be a step taken in futility, and Nigerians who truly do need those palliative will not be benefiting from it. It has shown forth. So the next line of action is what Nigerians would expect to see. And if Ahmed Bola Tinubu, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, is sincere in all the things that he has said, it's about time for actions to be put in place. And just to come down to a quiet opposite, remember the reactions that have through all the different retreats that have been held. Nigerians are asking, what is the morality, what is the wisdom behind staying for 6 months before actually holding a retreat? That this is something that should have happened immediately after the appointees were made. But then there is another conversation and argument in defense of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu. The appointees are still coming in.
Yeah.
They are not concluded yet. So you can say the president had to wait for a significant number of those to be appointed, confirmed, or screened and confirmed by the, the National Assembly, and then portfolios signed before this retreat is being done. And now that the retreat is being done, Nigerians will hope to see, a significant transformation in the nearest possible future.
Like, I think something that he also highlighted in his speech to the cabinet members, like we heard him say, if you have been confirmed, then you have nothing to fear if you are working. So it gives room to the fact that he needed time for this to hold. I mean, let's also acknowledge the fact that the Tinubu-led administration is still developing upon their blueprints and upon the things they want to do. It's just been 6 months. We do not expect to see the result of a 4-year done job in just the first 6 months. So they're still developing and, cross-checking their notes. These things that we projected to do, if we do it this way, will it still be effective for the Federal Republic of Nigeria? So there's still a lot for him to do, but like we said earlier, this particular body language and stance of the president, if it is implemented and followed through, it will be very good. I mean, setting up a unit for Hadiza to head to monitor the performance of ministers, if it is followed. I mean, he jokingly said something in the midst of that. He said, if you are not comfortable with the person of Hadiza, if you have a problem with that, come straight to me. I mean, he's tasking them with accountability. He's saying, we are going to probe, we're going to have our eyes on you, and if you have a problem with the person that I have put over that supervisory role, then you need to come with me to me directly and put your problems forward. So this is a strong stance that the president has taken up. But we need to see how this is interpreted into what they're going to start doing. Of course, we already had the conversation yesterday about some worrying turns and twists with Better I Do, who is in charge of poverty alleviation. How are you already picketed for some form of corruption, called in by the House of Reps to answer questions with regards to monies that have been released to you in just a couple of months? So these are the kinds of things that Hadiza is going to be saddled with. We need to see money go where money is supposed to go, projects being executed within the time window that has been agreed upon. But let's move on from that particular story. As earlier shared, please do feel free, of course, to make your contributions on Rise and Shine as we progress. Our phone lines are displayed on the screen. Send us WhatsApp messages. What are your thoughts on some of these issues that are being raised? WhatsApp messages, comments on our social media platforms. We're currently streaming live on YouTube, so take advantage of the comment section. Send us WhatsApp messages. But of course, remember that on the heel of the elections that was held in 2023, earlier on this year, there was also preparations hand in hand going on for the census. And about 800 billion naira was set aside for the running of that particular census. But it looks like 200 billion naira out of the 800 is what was released and what has been used so far. And we are seeing the House of Representatives calling in a resolve to probe the expenditure by the Nigerian Population Commission from the 800 billion naira, which was approved by the federal government for the conduct of the 2023 population and housing census. So yes, we had 800 billion naira approved as budget for the census, but so far so good. Mobilization, purchases, and all of that, they might have expended 200 billion naira. The House of Reps is calling them in to answer questions as to how those monies was used. Of course, this is sequel to the adoption of a motion moved by a lawmaker representing Aguta, federal constituency of Anambra State, Dominic Okafor. Now, of course, this motion reads, need to investigate the expenditure on the postponed 2023 population and housing census by the National Population Commission and conduct of the National Population and Housing Census. I think this is a very, very strong and important move that was made by Dominic at this time, because the census has been indefinitely postponed. It's not happening in November. It's not happening in December. If monies were budgeted and a certain amount was allocated and used, we need to really know what the agency used this monies for, so that at the time where the federal government now deems fit that everything is settled and we can go ahead with this population and housing census, we will not now be hearing that there are no monies available. So I think that this is a really strong motion that was moved at plenary.
Well, of course, when the census kick-started just within the concluding days of former President Muhammadu Buhari, there were a lot of concerns and debates on whether or not it was the right time for census to be done in Nigeria. And that was one of the last-minute decision of former President Muhammadu Buhari, just like we saw happening with the national carrier. We saw census, we saw the improvement of the universities and other things that were approved as at that point by the then President Muhammadu Buhari, as far as Nigeria is concerned. But the one thing that the Census Commission, the chairman, Isa Kwara, had said was that if Nigeria was not ready to conduct that census at that point, it was going to be a lot more cost effective on Nigerians as against just kickstarting and getting it over and done with. Because you're looking at training of manpower, which was one of the things that were kickstarted as at that moment. You're looking at purchasing of equipment. You're looking at the pre-census exercises that were conducted across the 36 states of the Federation and the FCT. Now, when you're looking at all of those trainings and the entitlements given to people who were brought in for the training, you definitely know that money has been spent. And there was also a move, as at the last time, there were moves for publicity and awareness creation on the part of the Nigerian Population Commission to sensitize Nigerians on the need for them to be counted cross boards in the respective locations. So, but it will be an interesting thing to see how the commission explains the spending of 200, billion naira to Nigerians out of the 800 billion naira. It will be an interesting watch. Let's get to hear exactly what the money was expended on. Yes, Nigerians know that a few activities were instituted here and there. A few trainings were done, conducted, seminars, awareness campaigns were done. Let's get to know how much exactly was voted for each of those things and how it actually amounted to 200 billion naira.
Another thing that, of course, Okafor has called on, the House of Reps to look into is he's saying 200 billion naira, if it was used for other projects, might have moved, the lives of Nigerians forward, even helped to cushion the palliative incentive by the federal government. So he's saying we cannot just allow these monies to be unaccounted for. Of course, there were people who moved to support the motion that was raised, several people in the House. Of course, as we see that security is part of the reasons, that were given for the postponement, apart from the wrong timing, of course. But it's important to see what this is going to make. Of course, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, who presided over the plenary, gave and of course referred the motion to the Committee on Population for appropriate advice. So of course Tajuddin Abbas, who is in charge of the 10th Assembly, has asked the committee to look into that particular motion, and let's see how it is going to be developed.
Well, of course, we do hope to see how the findings and the activities of the committee is going to help unravel the circumstances around it and let Nigerians know exactly how much was spent and how the monies were spent. But moving away from that, we see that the court has stopped the attempt move to remove the Rivers State Governor Fubara as the governor of Rivers State. Recall just a few days ago, even up until yesterday, Rivers State was on fire over the crisis between the former governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, and the present governor, talking about Fubara. Of course, Rivers State High Court, sitting in Ishiapo on Wednesday, being yesterday, issued an interim order restraining the Rivers State House of Assembly from proceeding with the planned impeachment of Governor Siminalayi Fubara. The court restrained the Speaker of the House, Martin Amewole, Deputy Speaker, and the Clerk of the House, and the State Chief Judge, Justice Simon Chibuzo Amadi. Of course, Justice Oben White issued the restraining order after Fubara's lawyer, Damian Okoro, argued before him and on an ex parte application presented to the court. The judge, in his ruling, held that it is hereby ordered that the parties in the case maintain the status quo in the case by the applicant as the governor of Rivers State, pending the application of the motion on notice, because the case was adjourned to 14th of this month, 14 November 2023, and the argument for the motion on notice has been placed. Of course, this is an interesting treat. We recall what Fubara said when he addressed the Rivers State people from the State Assembly complex where the drama unfolded. And part of the things he said was reiterating the fact that he's the chief security officer of the state and he was going to do everything within his power to ensure that the confidence of the people is stayed on him. Of course, security, peace is restored in the state. But just this morning, we've seen a comment coming from, Rivers State Governor that the case between him, the crisis between him and the Minister of the FCT, former Governor of Rivers State, is a family affair. And the comment trailing that comment or his statement is, if this is a family affair, why is it coming out so loud that it is affecting the affairs of Rivers State?
Well, I must say also that that's like the first time that someone is actually asserting that this is, this is an issue between Fubara and Nyesom Wike of Rivers State, because it has always, since the crisis started, it has been speculations of, things happening, lawmakers divided between Nyesom Wike and those that are for Fubara in the state. But of course, this court injunction is the latest in the unfolding of the political drama that is happening in Rivers State. Of course, that began on Monday night with the bombing of the State Assembly complex over the plot by the lawmakers to remove the governor. Of course, like the first in history, super early in the political career of anyone, there was a very strong move. Even the letter was delivered to remove Governor Fubara from office and looking for impeach Governor Fubara. Of course, several issues he had alleged of being shot at that morning also in Rivers State. But as of all of this time, we have not heard former governor, his predecessor, Nyesom Wike, giving voice to the feud that is perceived to be going on between them. But since the court injunction has given a stay order, let's see if that is going to bring some peace, because it looked like the lawmakers in the State House of Assembly, River State, were hell-bent on making sure that Fibera left that position.
Well, I think we saw a comment coming from Nyesom Wike on the heels of the meeting of the PDP elders, the likes of Adrian Clark, and the mediation and intervention by President Ahmed Bola Tinubu that the issue in River State will be resolved in the near possible time. But there are speculations that the issue stems down to Fubara deciding not to be manipulated or remote controlled by Nyesom Wike from the FCT when the affairs of the River State government and the River people is concerned. And there are also allegations of Wike asking for, I think, 200 billion naira to be given every month to him from the state coffers, which at this point remains allegations, speculations, until otherwise, made public by Fubara, who is the #1 citizen of River State and the one person who can tell Nigerians this is actually why this rift between myself and the former governor of River State. But one thing is said, and the River State elders have said, Wike cannot come into River State and then continue to rule or continue to govern when his tenure had elapsed. And of course, if we take our mind back to the chant by the youths of the state when the governor took a walk from the state assembly complex back to the government house, it shows that the people are really behind Fubara. But regardless of the scenario playing out, the River State people are hoping that this crisis will be given a rest very soon, so that peace and normalcy will be restored. But it's also a good thing to see that Fubara take the steps of heading to the court to get answers, and also ensure that peace is stayed on the matter so far.
The funny thing to this also is the fact that there are videos that is circulating of Nyesom Wike when he had clearly stated that for you to have helped someone into office, whether you financed it or whatever role that he played, doesn't mean that you have to come back as predecessor to that person to attempt to lord over them. And he had promised that that was not going to be the case with him and whoever comes up after him in River State. So if the feud has anything to do with these allegations that are hoisted at Nyesom Wike with regards to looking for certain percentages and other things, it will be bad for us to see the likes of Nyesom Wike not stand on the word. We know that Nyesom Wike is very boisterous when it comes to his orations, and Nigerians will hope to believe that he would also keep to those things. So if he's playing hanky-panky with his own words, seeming as one thing in the face of the media and the face of Nigerians, but attempting to have a hold on Fubara's government, then you will be having a field day to see how this is going to end, this father-son rivalry, according to Fubara. But then that's where we let that particular story to rest this morning. Some of the issues that have been on the table in the country, two things that we'll quickly look at this morning. The federal government has made a move as requested rather by the House of Representatives to auction the Nigeria Police Force barracks nationwide. This is a conversation that must be had. I know that if you know Nigeria very well and you have military persons around you, you will know that one thing that is a problem is the state of their habitation. Barracks are to write nothing home about. And we can see that dispensations have come and gone, governments have come and gone, building structures have come and gone. Most of what we used to call estates when we were younger have been developed, but the situation of barracks in Nigeria remains very, very deplorable. So to this effect, we saw the House of Representatives urging the federal government to auction police barracks nationwide to enhance officers' welfare. I think one of the conversations we continue to have also is looking into the welfare of the men and women of the Nigeria Police Force and how they stay, their accommodation is part of this strong concern. And I think one of the things that comes to mind very well when you think of where a person sleeps and wakes is the psychological effect that it has on them to be able to carry out their duties. But having the House of Representatives asking that these barracks be overhauled and auctioned to Nigerians. Is this the best move to do for the Nigeria Police Force? Let's not also forget that in times past, in several administrations, some monies have been set aside to redevelop this barracks, but it looks like either the monies have not even been enough to start off the project very well, or as usual, corruption also has been a burden that has eaten into the redevelopment of certain barracks across the country. But of course, this is the request by the Green Chamber, asked by the Ministry of Interior and Ministry of Police Affairs to liaise with the Bureau of Public Enterprise to immediately assess the value of all federal-owned barracks across the country and announce a public offering for the same when the public comes in to the accommodation of the Nigeria Police Force. Is this a good move made by the House of Representatives? Will this be effective?
Well, when you're auctioning the barracks owned by the federal government, that means you're selling them off. And when you sold them off, what happens next? What is the next move? Are you going to build another one in its place for the Nigerian police personnel to stay? Or you're auctioning it for individuals to come in, buy it off, develop it, and then sell back to the federal government.
And what cost would that be done?
And what cost would that be done? You're talking about real estate, and the average real estate houses built these days, these are not something that you ask the average Nigerian police personnel with their meager salaries to go and purchase. I mean, we know that there are different loan schemes that have been made possible and available to civil servants, even within the ranks and files of the Nigerian police. But how many of these police officers can actually be able to save enough to afford those houses on a daily basis? So it's a grave concern. Yes, there is a need for Nigeria to refurbish police barracks, military barracks, all the barracks across the different arms, security arms of government at this speed. But then auctioning the barracks out to Nigerians, making it open to public for the public to purchase and then gain ownership is a little bit a very challenging situation. That is literally like calling on the Nigerian government to mortgage all of its barracks to the public. And then let's also look at the security concerns. When you mortgage all the barracks to individuals, maybe real estate firms, and they come in, they take over the barracks, what's the guarantee that the blueprint that is going to come is going to consider the security situation of the barracks, or what needs to be prioritized as far as the welfare, the security of the Nigerian police force? Don't forget, across the different barracks you're talking about, there are police cells also sometimes instituted or included in those barracks. So a police barracks with the police office, the police cell, and then you're contracting that out or auctioning that out to the Nigerian people. What happens to all the other activities that happens within that establishment or within that housing facility? So it's a lot of concern, and in as much as the move by the National Assembly can be commended, it is been described by many policy experts as being haphazardly being taken, because the House should have rather looked into the monies that have been expended in keeping these facilities ongoing so far, and how these facilities can be given a facelift to align with present day's reality. Because if you're looking at auctioning, that means it's going to take a whole lot from the federal government. And if you're selling it out to buy it back after the developers must have developed this place, let's say, okay, in as much as the National Assembly has not given that move, let's say the plan is to auction it, have persons come in, develop it, and then sell it back to the federal government. Who gains and who loses at the end of the day? Is this another channel for the federal government to say, yes, we bought back XYZ houses at XYZ value, when in reality that is not the value that was being sold for? And another channel, it becomes another channel for people in position of power and authority to siphon public treasury.
It's a serious concern, because when we are talking of auctioning, you are literally taking up ownership of that facility to the next person that purchases it. Is this a good move? But the lawmaker, Omuri, of course, was stressing that between 2019 and 2022, 5 billion naira has been spent by the federal government on barracks renovation. Now, adding that despite all of these efforts, the face of this barracks across the country has continued to fail. And like I said initially, is it a question of releasing money money and these monies were not used, or if 5 billion has been invested, at least we should have seen some, commensurate work being done across the country. But the federal government, through the House of Representatives, is looking to auction the barracks across the country. Is this a good move? What do Nigerians think about this particular initiative? If you have money in the country, would you want to invest? And at what cost will the members of the Nigeria Police Force be getting these houses again? We'll just let our stories to rest there whilst we head straight on now to take our papers. What's happening on the front pages of a national dailies. Daily Spotlight is up next.
Of course, on Daily Spotlight, we're starting with the Nigerian Tribune this morning. On the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, we see the kicker there. Wike opens up on Rivers crisis, says nobody can take away our political structure. Impeachment is provided for in the Constitution. Fubara gets courts not restraining House on impeachment, says nothing wrong if father and son have issues. Indeed, nothing wrong if father and son have issues. But why should the issues affect the people of Rivers State? That's the big question we're asking this morning. That's the reason, page 11 of the Nigerian Tribune. I must succeed by all means, Tinubu says. Page 10, warn ministers at cabinet retreat, deliver or get sacked. That's the reason, page 10 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Reps issue 72 hours ultimatum to Attorney General of the Federation to submit report on Accountant General of the Federation, rather, to submit report on 100 billion naira COVID-19 intervention fund. That's the reason, page 12 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. We see labor talks tough over brutalization, arrest of NLC president in Imo, wants Tinubu to call Uzodimma to order. Ajero was in protective custody, not arrested. Police. That's the reason, page 10 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Kwabum government corporate organizations excited over editors conference in Uyo. That's the reason, page 23. Federal government needs 18.4 trillion naira to fix federal roads. Dave Umwai, page 16. Arrest warrant, court gives Emefiele January 25 to appear over $53 million debt. That's the reason, page 20. Lifting forex ban and restricted items will spell doom for poultry industry. PAN. That's the reason, page 28. Of course, we also see OAU student storms EFCC over arrest of 69 of their colleagues. That's the reason, page 15. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
Moving on from the Nigerian Tribune, our very next stop is going to be the Daily Trust. Big story there. Anger over planned 7 billion naira renovation of Tinubu Shetima's residences. It actually does warrant some form of anger. First Lady's vehicle to gulp 1.5 billion naira. Citizens Labour Party CSO's kick. President seeks National Assembly's nod to borrow $7.8 billion, 100 million pounds. Francis, we are saying that we cannot afford to increase salaries to 200,000 naira as minimum wage. But in the midst of this, the First Lady's vehicles is to go 1.5 billion naira out of the 7.8 billion that is going to be borrowed. $7.8 billion that is going to be borrowed. 1.5 is going to be set aside for the vehicle of the First Lady. Then the federal government is considering to renovate the residences of the president and the vice president. We know that in this country that when people are elected into offices, usually there is a place in this country that is called the Aso Rock Villa where they're expected to stay, and there is budget allocated to all of their life that is going to be spent there. How are we hearing that monies from the federal government, taxes of everyday Nigerians, are going to be used to renovate the personal residences of the president and the vice president? Someone really needs to check the temperature of what's going on in Nigeria. Well, we also have here some picture story there on the front page of the Daily Trust, building a stronger post-insurgency Yobe State. Of course, Governor Mehmet Labuni is giving some feedback there on what they intend to do to move the state forward after all of the insurgency that they have experienced. And that's all that we have on the front page of Daily Trust.
Well, our next stop is the front page of Daily Times. Kikade says, as workers set for protest, gunshots, brutality in Imo State as thugs, police manhandle NLC president. Hospitalized, right eye short, Uzodin's man's head leads arrest of Labour leader. TUC NLC report governor to Tinubu vowed to shut down state. We took him for protection. Police outrage against governor days to election. That story is on page 4 of the Daily Times newspaper. Suffering indigenous contractors beg Wike for payment. That story is on page 9. An interesting twist there. Wike prided itself with, settling all the contractors before the contract, was actually kick-started. I wonder how these indigenous contractors are crying out for payment at this point. How rising input caused deep business performance in October. We also see, okay, these are the major stories you find on the front page of Daily Times this morning.
Okay, let's see what paper we can look at next. Daily Times. We're going to look at lastly this morning, the Nation newspaper. Okay, the Nation performer gets sacked, something we've talked about already on Rise and Shine this morning. Catch up on all the conversation on our YouTube and social media platforms. That is what the president told his cabinet members at their first retreat. Of course, Ajero held to protect him, says police. We're going to find out how true that is. President seeks lawmakers not to borrow $7 billion and also 100 million euros. Dust over reg nominees, substitution in Senate. EFCC changes tactics over suspect passport seizure. And these are the stories that we have on the front page of the Nation. Bayelsa Imo Kogi 2023 off-season elections. Elections won't hold in 40 polling units. Kogi Central no-go area. Of course, insecurity has been highlighted as some of the problems. We also see here Diri Silva Camps clash over allegations of violence and thuggery. Re-elect Uzodinma, First Lady urges Imo women. Okay. Literally everything that we have here on the front page. Of course, stock markets 70,000 points set new record. Rift with Wike over soon, says Fubaram. 1.86 trillion naira required in 4 years to fix roads, says David Umahi.
Well, the last paper we'll be looking into this morning is the front page of Punch. The kicker there says court stops Fulbearer's removal. PDP governors consult Wike. Nobody can intimidate me. Impeachment not a coup. FCT minister insists crisis will be resolved, says Fulbearer. PDP governors plan Port Harcourt meeting. It's interesting to see how Wike is talking tough, and of course talking about nobody being able to intimidate him. I wonder where the intimidation is coming from. I mean, he's the minister of the FCT, for crying out loud. But we do hope that the issue gets solved, as Fulbearer has alleged this morning. That story is on page 14. You can read it up. Traders lament as fire destroys 300 shops in Lagos market. That story is on page 4 and 5. We also see on the front page, crude shortage delays Dangote refinery. 5 orders take off. Lack of supply to Dangote, shameful, says federal government. Minister blames low production. That's the reason page 2 and 21. Now, this is another conversation we've been talking about. We're talking about refining a crude oil in Nigeria, and yet you cannot provide, crude oil to Dangote refineries and 5 orders to take off, refining locally. It's a very big concern, and the federal government obviously need to cover their face in shame. President Tinubu seeks $7.8 billion US, 100 million euros fresh loan. That story is on page 21. it amazes Nigerians what we borrow money for and the frivolities that
They've explained to you they want to use that and fix the first lady's cars.
It's something that we need to talk about. But I think at this point we just take a pause and head out for a news brief break where Mary Joseph is already standing by to take us on. When we come back, a lot on the front pages of Nigerian newspaper this morning needs to be looked into, and we'd like to hear from you Nigerians. But let's hold it here. Stay with us.
states and government, Secretary General, distinguished delegates.
Disasters being Lagos, Nigeria for Spectrum TV to recover 40 lapses in still counting.
A very good morning to you and welcome to your morning news brief on Spectrum. Live from Uyo, I am Mary Joseph. We begin the radio report this morning where the Imo State Police Command later on Wednesday said the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, Joe Ajaero, was in protective custody hours after the union accused the police of arresting its leader. After the NLC raised an alarm that Ajaero was apprehended in Owerri, the police issued a statement saying the Labour leader was placed in protective custody. In a statement, the command spokesperson Okoye Henry said police operatives decided that Ajaero's safety was their top priority. Away from that, the House of Representatives has resolved to probe the expenditure by the Nigerian Population Commission from the 800 billion naira approved by the federal government for the conduct of the 2023 population and housing census. This was equal to the adoption of a motion moved by a lawmaker representing Aguta Federal Constituency, Anambra State, Dominic Okafor. Leading the debate, the motion, Okafor said despite the postponements, the NPC admitted that he have spent 200 billion naira as part of the 800 billion naira budgeted for the planning and mid-execution of the 2023 population and housing census. According to the lawmaker, the money invested in the postponed 2023 budget would have meaningfully changed the lives of many Nigerians and improved distribution of palliatives across the country. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu says ministers in his cabinet would only retain their offices based on their performances, which will be reviewed periodically. Tinubu made the assertion when he declared open the 2023 cabinet retreat for ministers, presidential aides, permanent secretaries and top government functionaries held at the State House Conference Center, Abuja. Tinubu noted that his special advisor on policy coordination, Hadiza Usman, who will spearhead the results delivery unit, will closely monitor the performances of the ministries, departments and agencies across the 8 priority areas of his administration. On the foreign scene, we told you that the leader of Palestinian militant group Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, has accused Israel of committing massacres in the Gaza war to cover its own alleged defeats. Haniyeh, whose Islamic group launched the bloody October 7 attacks on Israel that sparked the Gaza war, accused Israel of committing barbaric massacres against unarmed civilians. The health ministry in Hamas-run Gaza said that 3,648 children are among the 8,796 people killed in Israeli strikes since the war erupted. And finally, in sports, Chelsea reached the Carabao Cup quarterfinals as goals from Benoit Badeshile and Raheem Sterling were enough to beat championship side Blackburn Rovers at Stamford Bridge. Blackburn's best chance came in the final moments when substitute Arnon Sigurdsson was played throughout, denied by a fine Robert Sanchez save. Meanwhile, Newcastle United claimed their second Old Trafford victory over Manchester United since 1972 to avenge their Carabao Cup final defeat at Wembley and pile the pressure on home manager Eric Ten Hag. We'll have details of this and many more in our news at 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's head back to Rise and Shine where we have Francis and Uyai on standby. Do have a wonderful morning.
States and government, Secretary General, distinguished delegates.
Disasters being Lagos, Nigeria for Spectrum TV to recover 40 lapses in still counting.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Every day marks a day of significance.
That in view of the apology tendered by this former minister who had earlier been cleared by this August Assembly,
as we face critical issues, developments and events which shape our social and political landscape here in Nigeria and beyond. Political Spectrum is a program specially designed to help make sense of all the moving parts of developments and occurrences in our nation's polity and political economy.
There is nothing wrong with Nigeria, but there's everything wrong.
The educational history of public figures holds significance beyond mere biographical details.
From executive, legislative, and judicial developments at national and subnational levels to international diplomacy and relations.
Join us for exclusive interviews with key political figures, expert opinions, analysts, thought-provoking conversations for and against, shedding light on the major issues that matter. We will always keep you updated on the most factual, smartest, and unbiased reportage.
Stay tuned to Political Spectrum. Political Spectrum. All sides matter at the round table. Political Spectrum. Exclusive to Spectrum Television.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian Police Force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian Police Force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Of course, this is still Rise and Shine coming to you live on Spectrum Television, and we're beaming live from here, the very beautiful capital city of Akwa Ibom State. I'm talking Nigeria. We've brought you a lot of conversations, and you can catch up on it on our social media platform, all of which you can find on our website, SpectrumTV.live.ng. We started off with the registration issue in Imo State, where the electoral umpire INEC said 38 polling units will not be having elections as a result of no registration. We move to the warning issued by NIMET about the impending dust haze that will be coming over the country and the need for the aviation sector, people with illnesses that might be affected by the dust, to look into taking proactive measures to safeguard and protect themselves. Of course, NIMET has also promised to continue monitoring the trend of the weather change and, of course, inform Nigerians ahead of time for proactive measures. We also see that President Ahmed Bola Tinubu has again reiterated his standpoint that ministers, appointees of his who do not perform will be sacked, and he made the comment during the retreat that has been organized for the cabinet members of his administration. Of course, a lot of issues and comment coming out as far as President Ahmed Bola Tinubu is concerned. You're looking also about the issue that periodic review will be done in terms of performance, and the ministers, appointees of government have been urged to be accountable and transparent in the dealing. But of course, Nigerians are still not very much convinced that Ahmed Bola Tinubu will be able to achieve the things that he said he's going to achieve as far as transparency, accountability, and being able to fulfill his campaign promises anchored on the 8-point agenda of the renewed hope will be for Nigerians. And issues and concerns arising from that also borders on whether or not President Ahmed Bola Tinubu will actually be able to fire an appointee within this administration. That's something the Nigerians are waiting to see how that will span out. We're also talking about the crisis in River State between the former governor, now Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, and the River State Governor, Fubara, which of course the duo have said the issue will be resolved, while Wike on the other hand said it cannot be threatened, and that impeachment is a normal constitutional proceedings. Of course, concerns arises from there. We see that the federal government is planning to auction the Nigerian police barracks across, and of course make it open for people to buy in, and then the questions border on how good and how true and how that would mean, or what that would mean for Nigeria and the Nigerian police force, and of course the welfare of Nigerian police personnel across the different barracks. But of course, just before we took a time out for the news brief, we took you around Delhi Spotlight, front pages of a national dailies, and there were a lot of issues of conversation this morning. The issue between Labour, the NLC, and the issue in Imo State is a very grave cause for concern. As of yesterday, we got wind of information where the NLC were all going down to Imo State to protest poor workers' welfare in terms of how the state government is treating its workers and the poor remuneration, the owing of salaries, and other concerns that have been raised by Labour as of yesterday. It was a funny and ugly twist of event to see that the governor, Uzodima's aide, was the one leading the gang of reported thugs and policemen who raided the NLC secretariat and then went away with the NLC chairman Joe Ajero. And of course, there are a lot of concerns. We saw in the papers this morning the police coming out to say they took in Joe Ajero to safeguard his life. And then you ask a question: how is a police official, or how is a police team made up of thugs who are supposed to be criminal element, coming out to abduct the NLC chairman? And now how does that amount to or constitute taking him away for safety as against what he went to Imo State to do?
Well, there's a lot of issues that we're going to be discussing this morning. Of course, we are hoped to be joined by the NLC chairman in Uyo. Let's see what exactly is happening. There's a lot of allegations that's being raised against the governor of Imo State, Hope Uzodinma. Of course, allegations of an attempted assassination against the person of Joe Ajero. It is what is really happening. Of course, we also saw that on the front pages of our papers, the Niger Police Force in Imo State rather said that they took in Joe Ajero to protect him, as opposed to speculations of arresting the NLC leader in Imo State. This is a lot of concern this morning, of course. In just a few minutes, we'll be joined by the NLC chairman in Akwa Ibom State to see what exactly is happening with their boss and where is this headed. Of course, that is where we now have NLC nationwide threatening to go on a strike if the issue is not resolved. Initially, it was about releasing Joe Ajero. I think of the moment he has been released, but of course, we've seen his pictures splattered across the front pages of our national dailies with his eyes swollen and all of that. It is this goes to show that Joe Ajero was manhandled in Imo State, and that is a really serious situation. Protests are lawful, especially when they're done within the guidelines of what should be obtained. Why then was he taken into custody of any kind, and what is happening? These are the issues that we will be discussing this morning on Rise and Shine. Of course, we'll also be joined by a public affairs analyst, Annie Justin, to look on the front pages of our national dailies this morning. Let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll be joined by both of our guests, and let's look at these two issues.
We sincerely apologize we couldn't bring your guests. We're still trying to establish contact, and as soon as we're able to do that, we'll definitely be having those conversations. But looking on the front page of the Nigerian newspaper this morning, the fact that the House of Reps has issued 72 hours ultimatum to the AGF to submit report on the 100 billion naira COVID-19 intervention fund is another issue. Recall during the COVID-19 pandemic, Nigerians went through a lot of hardship and suffering. Accessing food was a big problem, and despite the huge amount of money given by international donor agencies, by multinational agencies, we still saw state government, we saw palliatives not getting to the Nigerian people. Of course, government will always say that the money that was voted for also to look into the issue of solving the problems of Nigerians at that time was not accounted for. And that is a very grave concern at this point. We're seeing a whole lot of movement by the National Assembly to probe different moves. We saw the move for the N-Power, Dr. Beta Edu being invited, the move now for the COVID-19 fund, and all of the other moves that has been instituted by the 10 National Assembly. But the grave concerns Nigerians are having at this point in time, how many of these invitations, how many of these queries, how many of these invites will actually translate into people who have, for whatever reason, been found wanting, people who have actually pilfered from the public treasury, probes and investigation that will end in white paper, that will end in the House committee, just being issued, and then after that, we do not get to see anything happening.
They are the issues. Annie Justin has just joined us, of course, all the way from your public affairs analyst. Let they who understand what is going on in this country answer some of the big questions on the front pages of the national dailies. Annie Justin, good to have you on the show this morning. Pretty long time.
Good morning, Uyai.
How is the city of Uyo on your end today?
It's a very wet morning. We are having a rainfall here. It's burning on my part of Uyo.
Oh, and that's also... Okay, so there's several issues happening, and concerns that we saw on the front pages of our national dailies. We don't even know which one to start from. We're meant to be speaking with the NLC boss, but do you we see that Joe Ajero was arrested. The English word that was about to come out of my mouth was abducted. He was arrested in Imo State yesterday, where he went to officiate a protest in Owerri, and there's a lot of controversy coming out of that. We've even seen the presidential candidate of ANC now, Sowore, saying that it was an attempted assassination move by Hope Uzodinma of Imo State. What are your thoughts with this particular incident?
Well, I'm not very conversant with the incident of Imo State. I'm just getting to hear about it. But all the same, we're having a lot of abduction.
We seem to be having some glitches.
For political reasons. I would say it is not only when it's orchestrated for political reasons that we begin to look at it. I mean, there are a lot of Quaibomites, quite youths out there have also been abducted, maybe on their way to the NYC, up north, or for any other reason. So I would say that it's not only when these things have political inducements that the citizen, the polity at large begin to look at them. I might not be very conversant with this particular one, but I'm conversant with others.
Okay, so just let's rest on that particular issue so that we do not misinform our audience. The NLC chair was meant to take up on that, but sure we can take that subsequently. But let's, okay, Francis, I'll just let you take on this one.
Well, let's look at the fact that during the COVID-19 period, monies were sent to Nigeria, and we all are not strangers to the fact that after the COVID-19 lockdown, Nigerians discover food stashed away in warehouses. Alongside this, we also reports that a lot of money that was voted for within the Nigerian government and then donations made to the Nigerian government to help Nigeria cushion the effect of the COVID-19 issue or pandemic was not adequately or efficiently judiciously utilized for the welfare of Nigerians. We see that the National Assembly is moving to probe and has given the office of the AGF 72 hours ultimatum to give a concrete detailed report on how 100 billion was actually utilized during the COVID-19 or the 100 million COVID-19 fund. I'd like to hear your thoughts. So far, we've seen a lot of moves to probe, investigate, query, spending and expenditure made previously by the previous administration, by the National Assembly. Do you see this actually taking Nigeria anywhere? You see it as another political move that will soon amount to nothing?
Yeah. Are you on to me now?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay. Yeah. I would say these things are political reasons. They are reasons because of it. In my place, say what is going to start up well, see how it starts in the morning. It's going to be a good day. See by how they start. I mean, you cannot tell me that a dispensation or a parliamentary dispensation or the House of Rep or whatsoever is out there trying to probe or question a past government when they themselves are showing tendencies that they want to pack our commonwealth, our patrimony, just for self-defense. If you want to tell me to audit myself, you have to audit yourself. I mean, we have a House of Rep and a Senate that have displayed plutocracy in the way they want to manage the affairs of Nigeria. We can see how much they have allotted themselves, a number of vehicles, they have bought, what the presidency itself has allotted to itself to buy a presidential yacht in billions of naira. What it has allowed to renovate by just millions in billions of naira too. And you are now here trying to prosecute and the past regime for monies not well spent. I mean, that does not show honesty. You cannot go to a country with unclean hands. If you want to do what is right, you must start with yourself. You must show example before you ask another person to do same. Your life must always reflect what you teach. So, in my own thoughts, I think these things are really just trying to confuse the common man while they continue with the excessive squander of our common patrimony. So I don't see any honesty to it. I don't see how it's going to be effective. I think they are just pointing us to the wrong direction so that the masses won't start to ask questions about how we are wasting our patrimony, especially in a time like this when the economy is dwindling.
A move to distract Nigerians from paying attention to the most important things happening in the country. And just to buttress on this so that, you can further respond. In terms of still squandering the nation's, finances in the face of the current reality, Annie, on the front page of the Daily Trust, we see that there's information here, anger over planned 7 billion naira renovation of Tinubu Shetima's residences. And also, out of this, we see that the First Lady's vehicle is to gulp 1.5 billion naira. We've seen that the Nigerian citizens and the Labour Party have kicked against this particular move. This is a problem. This is also on the heel of the fact that the president is seeking the nod of the National Assembly to borrow $7.8 billion, about 100 million euros. This is happening, Annie Justin. Tinubu's and Shetima's residences and spend 1.5 billion naira on the First Lady's vehicles.
You're saying the same thing I'm saying. You see, when you tell us that you want to fix Nigeria, and you take fuel subsidies money from the poor, they floated naira and they introduced school fees to fund your own luxury lifestyle. Then you're out to make Nigerians more miserable. You are not out to help them. I mean, when you look at the sum allotted to these things, it's preposterous. It's something you can't believe would happen in this age and time in a country that is suffering and groaning under the yoke of poverty as Nigeria is. I don't know. I don't know who to blame because of actually our leaders. But, if the president wants to buy a presidential yacht at this time, or wants to renovate a presidential lodge for 4 billion naira, or wants to buy a car for the First Lady. And this is a government that, I mean, the president has a mansion that stretches all through Bodilon, Lagos, and Queen's Drive, and you don't want to live in any of that. You want to go and renovate a mansion for people. Well, Nigeria, you can see these people are not taking Nigerians for a ride.
Okay, Annie, we don't know what seems to be giving us that noise. There's a kind of hallback that we're having. We don't know if it's from your end. So you help us check what is causing the noise so that we can hear you clearly.
Hello, I didn't hear you there.
So probably you have to shift away from your phone so that we can hear you clearly. We have a noise coming on air.
Okay. So Ali, as I was saying, the office of the First Lady is just not constitutional. It has never been. So when you want to allot that kind of money to buying a government that is responsive, a government that cares about the plight of the citizenry. But for now, we are like this for a very long time.
Okay. Last week, the president, there was some information coming out.
I think they are sought to be able to have a more absolute control.
It's not so much we can even talk about again because of how much the network is interfering with your speech this morning. But Annie, thank you so much for coming and shedding light on some of the pressing concerns on the front pages of our national dailies this morning. We appreciate you for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Well, that's the much we can take, but serious issues, from banning his son Sheyi Tinubu from being part of the cabinet meeting, and plus other people also who come. Why would your family members be at all? They've even finished saying it's at the FEC meeting and come to a conclusion someone has leaked the information and is misinforming the populace. So I think the president really needed to put a finger on that.
Well, in the first place, if you look at the corporate environment, for instance, you cannot wake up and get to be part of a meeting you were